Welcome, I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision studios in the UK, you're watching the BVTV network. Now, here at BizVision, we don't just rush and say yes to any potential guest on BVTV. Instead, we think first how that guest will help or add value to you, our viewers and listeners. Both guests and yourselves need to feel that you've gained from watching, listening, participating. That's why we took time to consider in what of many ways my guest today could deliver value for you. You see, his subject matter may often be seen as academic or even techie, but it's far from that. It's of the moment, and it's about data, the gold mine of any business. But my guest says that most companies struggle to get value from their data. So let's go solve that by meeting the author of this book, The Data Mirage, Why Companies Fail to Actually Use Their Data. Welcome, Ruben Ugarte. Hello.
Hi,
Ruben.
Malcolm. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, listen, let's settle this once and for all, you and I. Is it data or data?
I think I said data, but many clients, they look at me and they say data. And there's a third one, I think, it's said a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I think data is the right approach, to be honest.
Oh, well, I'll say tomato then, and you can say tomato, Oh, well, whichever it is across the world, those four letters certainly are having huge impact now, aren't they? I'll be chatting to Ruben about data in three parts: why, what, and how. First, I'll ask him, why do business leaders need to get an ethical grasp on data and its usage? In part two, I'll ask him what in reality is happening. And in part three, we'll chat about leaders steering their data strategy. But first, Ruben, can you briefly tell us who Ruben Ugarte is and why your fascination for data?
Yeah, my background is really as a technical engineer, and I learned how to code when I was a kid. I was 15, 16. And ever since then, I started building websites and doing freelance and consulting work. And about 6 years ago, I wanted to move away from the coding. I realized I wasn't one of those people who can stare at a screen all day long and write code. But so I wanted to work more on the marketing side, business side. And I found this field of data that was technical, because it really is a technical topic, the collection of it, the analysis of it. But it's primarily used by non-technical folks, marketing teams, sales teams. And that became an amazing niche to be in. I found myself almost being a translator between technical teams and non-technical teams and trying to help them bridge the gap. And this world of data was just fascinating. And then the more I learned, the more I realized all this, counterintuitive ideas, which I put in the book around how people think about data. They assume the facts are just facts and all you need is facts and, you can make a decision. There were all this, nuances that came out when I went deeper into the field.
Yeah. Do you know what I like about your book? And it's not a book that you do a quick read, by the way, everybody. It's a book that you need to take time and absorb. And Ruben helps you because at the end of each chapter is making you gives a chapter summary. But what I like about it is, and at first I have to admit, Ruben, when I first started, I think, oh no, I'm going to be reading an academic book. And then I got the bit where you say that what people are after are sort of answers. They're not tools. They're wanting to know, what's my data telling me, rather than, all the techie bit about the data. That's the bit that really grabbed me. And that's the bit where I think, from a personal point of view, everybody's going to find different, where the real value of this book's in. Ruben, let's get started on the why of part one. So why do leaders need to get an ethical grasp on data and its usage?
Well, to start, there's a phrase that I think it's overused, but it's still true. And that is the world is rapidly changing. We saw that in COVID. It was before COVID. It will be after COVID. And data is a tool that can help to deal with that uncertainty, those changes, helps you gauge what is happening. Note that I don't think it's the answer or the only answer. You still need intuition, experience, and all those other things. But data, I think, plays a very important role. And some of the best companies over the past year did well because of data, because they had the numbers as to how to move to a digital presence or how to move remotely while still managing employee happiness and so on. So that's really the why of it, that it gives you a competitive advantage and it can help you make decisions. So for businesses that do it well, and we likely know those names, right? They tend to be tech companies, for example, right? We think Google, we think Spotify, we think Amazon. They do data really, really well. And I think it's one of the things that helps them do well. So other businesses, whether you're tech or not, you can also achieve some of those same results.
Yeah, it really is fascinating that. But what I really like about some of the comments, let me just read this bit that's on the back of your book, by there. According to Forrester, only 38% of senior executives and decision makers have a high level of confidence in their customer insights, and only 33% trust the analytics they generate from their business operations. Now, I think that just takes me back. Well, I wasn't there at the time, but in the 1800s, we had a prime minister called Benjamin Disraeli, who was famous for saying statistics, and damn lies. Does data lie?
Yes, I think it does. Look at the sort of the data we're all surrounded by, which is COVID-19 numbers. And it's clear that the numbers aren't just the numbers. Everyone's interpreting the numbers wildly different, right? And some people think this is real, some people think it's not. What does this mean? Should we do that? Should we do this? So I don't think numbers are just numbers. And in companies, they go through biases and preferences and expectations. And you might have, I've been in meetings where a number is presented, a statistic, and it's received completely different by people in the room. It's almost like a different language. And you look at, well, it was just a number, it's a percentage. I mean, how more objective can you get? But it's just the way we interpret numbers. And that's, I think, the challenge with data, that there's an assumption that it is objective, and all you have to do is show it, and people will get it. And my argument in the book is that's not the case. You really have to work to a lot of the psychological people challenges when you're trying to get insights and answers from your data.
Yeah, I like very much indeed the bit where I have a personal interest in that you talk quite a lot about KPIs and actually people just invent KPIs just to look good at times and everything. But you very sensibly show people how they can drill down and get the right KPIs and find get the information from the data to help those KPI management, don't you?
Yeah, I think companies have too many KPIs, and part of it comes from just being able to build dashboards and reports. But I think about it like a car, right? You think about driving the car. The car has a lot of things going on at any given moment. Yeah. But you're sort of shown the right KPIs at the right time. So as the fuel runs low, you're shown a gauge of it. Maybe when the oil runs low, the speed and so on. But if you were told by the car every little thing that was going on, the car just converted the fuel into energy, and the air was, kept at the right pressure for the tires, it drive you crazy. You wouldn't be able to drive. There'd be so much overload. And that's, I think, the same thing that companies want to achieve with KPIs. You want to have the right KPIs at the right time. And that means narrowing down. It means looking at KPIs are as close as possible to what you actually care about. So it might be revenue, it might be profit. Some companies, of course, don't look at revenue and profit, like technology companies. That might be growth for them. Maybe for a not-for-profit, you're looking at engagement with your donors or your members. But nonetheless, as close as possible as you can get, the KPI will be much stronger.
Yeah. One of the things that just between you and I, because, there's only a few thousand other people might be listening, is what leaders can get from this book, from my point of view, is if they study this book carefully, leaders, they'll be able to get those questions that they will throw the chief technical officer or the data officer into panic, because they'll know from reading this book what questions to ask. And that will be the panic, won't it? It's great from that point of view. whole new world of views in your book, Ruben. Right. Before we move to part two, but I'd like to remind viewers and listeners of your URL, which is a doddle to do. As you can see, viewers from behind me, it's Ruben Ugarte. But for listeners, let me help you with that one. Ruben is R-U-B-E-N, Ruben, and Ugarte is U-G-A-R-T-E, RubenUgarte.com. And before you asked me, Ruben and I did discuss where Ugarte comes from beforehand, and he thinks it's Spanish and is not quite certain. But if anybody's got any answers, then please send them in to me. Ruben's book is called, I'm holding it to camera, as you can see here, The Data or Data, you make up your mind there, The Data or Data Mirage. Why companies fail to actually use their data. I think there's a wealth in here if you just take your time to think about it. It's published by Business Expert Press. Ruben, time for part two, the what part. So what in reality is happening in many businesses as regards data? What are the mistakes in strategy that are being made?
Yeah, so there's a few. So one, and perhaps maybe the most common, is that data isn't actually being used. Now, every company has data. That's why, I think in the book I talk about not having to pitch you or convince you around use of data. Someone already did that, and you are collecting it in some way, but it's not being used. And what happens in a lot of companies is there's a lot of friction to access that data. You might need to be technical. You might need to know technical languages. You might need to go through someone like a data analyst or just someone else who creates reports for you. And the best companies, on the other hand, they democratize access to data, and they make it almost so people metaphorically are tripping on it. It's available as email summaries. It's available in their communication tools like a Slack or Microsoft Teams. There's dashboards, of course, you can look at. You can export it, so you can look at it in Excel if you feel more comfortable there. And it's just available in many formats. And that makes it, of course, much easier for people to actually consume it. The second thing that companies are not doing as well is really making sure that people actually understand how to work with numbers. And, I'm surprised at the number of people I run into who don't have really a good grasp of sort of basic statistics, basic math, and they're not comfortable with it. For a lot of them, they're being thrown back to statistics 101 in college or university, and it was not their favorite class. This is not where they want to go back and reminisce. But nonetheless, you need some basic skills here, some basic training around these topics, and they can be done. You don't have to be a full-time statistician or a full-time scientist here, but you do need to know some basic probabilities, how numbers work, how numbers can be misleading, right? How numbers can be tweaked to sort of say whatever you wanted to say, and ensure that people are comfortable working with the numbers that are given to them. So those are likely the two main things that cause that gap, which, what I call it the mirage. That a lot of companies, or executives especially, they know why they need data. They know why they want it. They're making progress in terms of collecting it and storing it. But the actual usage of it, the answers and the insights, that's a bit of like a mirage. Yeah. It seems to be there, but the closer you get to, it's not quite what you expected.
Yeah. Do you think so many businesses, it's a bit like strategies and execution, doesn't they? 90% of strategies are never executed. Is that the same sort of thing in data? Is all this data's gathered in and it's just wasted?
Yeah. And I think there's a chapter on technology in the book because I knew I had to include that. But I think technology is actually getting easier and better as the years goes on. So the ability for a company to collect data is getting easier every year that we go on here. So I think it's natural for companies to have more and more data of different kinds, different quality. But the challenges around people, those are not really changing as fast. Our ability, for example, to consume information is still roughly the same as it was a few hundred years ago. Our short-term memory can hold, a few sort of pieces of data and so on. So those things are not changing as fast. And that's what leads to companies being stuck. And for a lot of my clients, we do a lot of technology work, but I always tell them, we're going to get this done. It's going to be relatively straightforward, but the real work will start once you have this technology in place and we have to get people to use it and understand it and find those answers.
Yeah. I'm a bit concerned at the moment that across the world that too many people are trying to mystify, and you talk about the Mirage, obviously, trying to mystify data. And I don't know whether it translates into Canada and the USA, but that story about the emperor's new clothes, everybody's saying that he's wearing new clothes and he's not wearing any new clothes. He's being misled. And I see lots of web companies offering data usage and anonymization and things like that. And it's so complicated what they say they're offering. Are they just trying to mislead us, or are they just trying to look more important than they really are?
Yeah, I think they're just responding to what the consumer demand is, which is typically around more technology, better technology, how do we make this easier from a technology perspective. And when you look at conferences, and even when I wrote the book, I looked at the marketplace, of course, for what the book could look like. And it was primarily, the other books were mostly focused on technology.
Yeah.
So I think that's what companies and executives are saying. And of course, vendors respond to that. But like I said, it's not exactly what's missing. So I could see companies saying, you know what, we're not getting the answers we want from the data. We should maybe get more technology. Maybe if we had more machine learning, more artificial intelligence, we'd be able to do it. And that is not usually the case.
No. I like also in the book how you give some good examples of, let's call it simplifying. For example, Spotify, their DIB approach, DIBB, what I think it is approach.
Yes.
And I actually understood that, I just like the way you've done that. And because, if a company is going to use the data and everything, that Spotify approach is something that every department could understand, can't they?
Exactly. Yeah. And I did a workshop a couple of days ago on this idea of frameworks for testing things and how to take data and use it. And the over sort of right argument there was, you want to keep this simple. A lot of this ideas you're already doing informally, right? The way companies work and people work is typically through a bit of a trial and error approach, even if they don't call it that. They think of an idea, they try it, they see how well it works, and they repeat. And that process may be quite quick, or it may be quite slow. But then you can start thinking of how you bring data into that already existing way of thinking. And then maybe when you come up with ideas, you look at some data to back them up. And when you're looking at what you did, you can look at some data to see its performance. And that's to me what sort of data adoption or being data driven really starts to look at. Just little bit by little bit, people start to use numbers to guide their decisions and guide how they approach their work.
Yeah. Thanks, Ruben. Now for part 3, the how. And just as a little sort of addendum to what we've just been talking about so far, in this new and altered world, businesses have got to be agile and adaptive. And one of the people I was interviewing recently says you can't be fast adaptive. You've got, post-adaptive, you've got to be pre-adaptive. And that's what data can allow you to do, to be agile and pre-adaptive. How should leaders steer their data strategy so they can uncover achievable results? What's your suggested action journey?
Yeah, so I talk about a framework that I call the 3 Ps, which looks at people, process, and providers. Providers being technology vendors. So I would urge all executives to look at their data plan and data strategy within those 3 sections. You want to look at the people who will be involved in this, not just the people who are going to capture the data, but who are going to use it, and what skills might be needed, what training do you need to hire people to help you deliver this. Then the process, it's really how you turn data into insights. And you can be really, the more clear you are here, the more better it is. Is this going to happen on a weekly basis? There's going to be a weekly meeting where insights are shared and discussed. Is it going to be weekly reports, dashboards? Is there going to be someone who supports people and provides sort of weekly training and coaching on how to use the numbers? And then lastly, providers, which is technology. And what technology do you need? What vendors? where do you need to level up, how you store and collect data, and so on. And I find when you start to think in these three areas, you start to notice where you might have gaps. Maybe you haven't really thought much about people. You sort of assume that everyone would just be fine. All you had to do was give them the tools and the reports, and they could take it. But that may be true. It may not be true. So I would put this as a starting point. And of course, for all executives and teams, at the end of the day, data is meant to help you achieve some tangible goals. So you also want to think about how this actually aligns with your overall strategy. If you're trying to achieve a certain position in the market, how will this help you? If you're trying to increase sales, increase revenue, how will that help you? And being quite almost obsessed about this connection, right? Because you can end up with a lot of data, a lot of numbers that really mean nothing to your business objectives. And it's just almost like this sort of mental exercise. So you really want to be quite clear as to how this aligns with where you want to go as a company.
Can I add in and squeeze in a fourth P, please? And the word is protect. It's coming through enormously in the UK at the moment and other places. Supply chains, the danger of cybersecurity, sharing necessary data, particularly in styles to make more efficiency across the supply chain, the protecting of that data. Do you think we're getting a bit too lax as we're moving so fast?
I gotta say, maybe when I write the second edition, I might have to credit you and rename it to the 4 Ps and not the the DP there. But you bring a good point, right? And I do think this is something that's top of mind. We saw, of course, the US had a hack recently on with Colonial, one of the pipelines. And we, of course, see data privacy, especially in Europe with the GDPR and equivalence being done in the US and Canada, and the rest of the world will likely follow. So I do think it's a new world that companies are going into, not a world where you can't just collect everything and then hope that one day you get to it. You have to be quite strategic with what you collect, how you store it. If there's something that you don't really need, you might not really need social insurance numbers. You might not really need phone numbers in your business. Then you might be better off not collecting it at all to avoid the risk of leaks, to avoid the risk of fines on data privacy. And, I think this IT security or cybersecurity jobs are just constantly going to be increasing for companies. I work with a lot of companies, and a lot of their data is just in one place, of course, because it needs to be for analysis, but it also makes it a much more higher, a likelier target for it. So the protection of it and how you think about it and how you collect it is something that's going to be top of mind for a lot of companies going forward.
Yeah, and I say that in the light of this week, the UK government as teased, or it's announcing it's going through an inquiry at the moment to impose on all suppliers, that particularly those bidding for public sector contracts and everything, that they provide right the way down the supply chain a protection of that data that's being shared amongst them, and they're evidential about it. That's the interesting thing. I think there's lots of thought process in this great book, by the way. And as I said, it's not just a technical book. It's a book that leaders should be reading so that they can actually then start to ask the right questions. And these are the questions that leaders should be asking today. If you're today's leader wanting to make certain your business is going to be around in the future. Data is now omnipresent in nearly all businesses of all sizes, of all sectors. Ethical usage of the data is key to business effectiveness. And by the way, did you notice that when Ruben started talking to me there, he started using the word data instead of data? He'll have to correct that when he gets back to clients in the US next time. It's gold, though, within the business, and leaders need to be at the helm of their data strategy. Don't abdicate it. Make sure you're at the helm of that strategy. And just like me, you now see this treasure and want to use it wisely. So my thanks to Ruben Ugarte, author of this book. As you can see, the Data Mirage, for an awakening interview. Thanks, Ruben.
Thanks, Malcolm.